On this episode of Lapeef, Let's Talk.
When Rila was saying about the exchange, or you said exchange, correct? I don't know what was said because that was a conversation between men, and I don't really know exactly, and I don't think either one of those men are going to tell me exactly what was said, just because that's probably man talk. I have no idea. But what I do know is that I want to express something else to you all. It's not just about men talking. It's also a dowry system. We have dowry, which is money given to the bride's family, depending on certain things. So um, all these things come into play when we're talking about the exchange, as you always call it. There's a lot more that goes into it than just the men talking. It's
Yeah.
a lot of negotiating, a lot of compromises, a lot of questions of how things will be handled in the future, and so on.
Because I wanted to research a little bit more, kind of the conversation, because even with last week, I think for me, a little bit hesitant to get into kind of a conversation because I didn't know necessarily like your views or what you were saying, especially when we have someone on the panel. If anyone talks bad about my Black culture, I do get defensive because it's important to me. And especially when we talk about it with other cultures, and I'm like, man, we're trying to show the worst of us and, have a culture that's looking at, just kind of like, okay, well, they're better than you and Black women, y'all better. And so that's why I was like, well, let me learn a little bit about, your culture. And I thank you so much for being on the panel last week and even today, because I feel like I learned a lot. And I was like, well, let me research a little bit more, that let's see where our cultures, are different. And then even understand, and I don't know much about Muslim, I'm a Christian, but I know there's different facets of the Islamic religion as well. Correct? Right. So it is even different depending on the the country that you're in on that. So it was a lot of stuff I think that I learned about your culture, which I would love to talk about, your culture, because I think that's what you're on to learn, and not just your religion, but what has gone in your culture that makes you who you are and what we can learn from or take away from.
I want to say
And that's
something
what I would love
before
to learn from.
I want to say something before she speaks. I
Mm-hmm.
noticed that you said that there was some bad talk about our culture.
Yes.
And real, I want you to chime in. When I was listening, I didn't hear that. The intention of the conversation was just to see the different variations and like the differences between like different cultures. Um, I don't believe that she was speaking bad about our culture.
I didn't say she did. And I did
No, I
not
think she
say
said
that.
there were
But
some things that was
right, and it
said
was.
that was did it was kind of like not in the most positive light, and she was
Yeah, I
saying,
did. And
Right.
I told
It wasn't that.
Anton said
You
it. He said
saying,
our culture was, Anton specifically said Black culture is trash.
Okay, you're talking about more so from Anton. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm talking where we say our culture is trash in front of a different culture that only gave us, a speck of them. But it's like we all have problems. And as a Black woman, I do get defensive because I'm not going to speak ill will of my culture in front of people that's not in my culture. I just not. I didn't do that when Kim was on there. Not doing it. I'm not doing. That's just not what I'm going to do.
I'm trying to figure out why we're separating it. It's just a
Because
conversation
it is
for
that, because we're
for all of us
different.
to learn.
but
"Oh,
I agree with,
We can learn.
the thing is that if we are in a situation where we are talking about different cultures, which, I will always respect the different cultures and whatever. But if we're speaking on it as if one is better than the other, in fact, I was explicitly asked, so which one is better? And it's just like,
no, no, I didn't ask you what culture was better. I said which way
I
of
didn't say
marriage was
you did.
better.
I didn't say.
But wait, so
I just said that I was explicitly asked.
And I got.
but ladies, this is what I think is brilliant about what JR does, because that is part of the conversation. The fact that like Courtney's like, hey man, I'm staying on code. right?
Well, I mean, it's not necessarily on code.
Because it does interpolate. It does interpret that way. But
Well,
what,
okay.
hold on, Court. Hold on. It interprets that way. But what
No, that's fine.
is we're on a public platform having a public discourse, and we have the opportunity. And I agree with you in the sense of, because I didn't see. I agree with JR. I didn't hear anything from the panelists in terms of our culture. And Anton does what Anton does. You know what I'm saying? He's a different animal. So I understand that when it comes to him. I'm not making excuses or anything. Like, I'm just saying I understand that when it comes to him. So I wasn't tripping on that. But he does carry a lot of the views of a lot of people in terms of our culture. And I'll let you have it, Court. But this all boils down to where is the leader for me. Is where is the leadership? Because when I hear Ameera talk, guess what she's going to defer to? Father, husband, brother, uncle,
Of course,
culture,
yes.
right? Now, how many women in our community will say the same thing?
Well, let me piggyback on you, because you're right. She does say that, and that I completely agree. And I think that, not talking down, but a lot of us are missing that as far as the father as the overhead. And I know, Ameera, you spoke on that on your page, because I was able to kind of check it out just to see, what your mind frame was. And I completely agree. I also know that with your culture, you guys have an honor culture as far as with the Muslims. So what that means is that in the Lebanese community, they won't speak ill will. They will not embarrass. And I talked to Lebanese men. They will not deny anything that brings shame to their name or their community. You will never hear or be on YouTube where she's going to, or anyone of the Middle Eastern community is going to speak ill will about them. They'll do it at home, but they're not going to get on a public platform in front of others.
I understand what you're saying, but addressing problems, we have mostly it's handled in Arabic most of the time, so maybe you guys don't see it, but it's all over YouTube. We're constantly, we're constantly. If you go to a channel called Memory TV, it's all in Arabic, and we're all talking about Middle Eastern issues, everything, and it's all translated in English. So we do talk a lot about it, even between.
I did check those out, and it
is a little bit different, Ameera. And I don't just to be honest, I don't think, and I hope you're not taking this conversation personal as if you have to rebut, because I think what Courtney is actually introducing is a conversation that should be had internally amongst ourselves, because what she's talking about, I think, and I know you said it wasn't the truth, but it interprets as staying on code. And I agree with you, Court.
All cultures do, except us.
Right.
And from last week, I was like, let's not degrade our people in front of people that looks at us as not the best.
But this is something that Kay talked about last week, and I think it went over. I think it went over a lot of people's head when she said. When Kay says
as soon as you finish, I'm gonna go to Kay, and then I'm gonna let Lauren.
Sure. Yep.
Okay.
And I'll pipe down, honestly. But Kay talked about having a shared history, a shared culture, shared tradition. I talked about marriage being about covenant, right? The whole buzzword right now is about marriage being about business. Ameera talked about family, right? So covenant is exchange for weaknesses, right? So in traditional times, if you had a warrior family and you had a farmer family, the warrior family went to the farmer family and said, "Hey, we're gonna do this exchange. You wed your son, you wed your daughter, and I'm gonna make sure you're covered. You're gonna make sure I'm covered, right?" So if I was to pose the question to Ameera, in that situation where the gentleman came and he talked to your dad, can you break down, if possible, if it happened at all? What was the exchange in a covenant, or do you believe that marriage is about business?
Or wasn't an exchange? Because I'm learning, and even learning your culture, Ameera, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that it's more arranged. You guys marry on socioeconomic status, religion. I know you guys have a very high rate of dating within families, cousins, FYI, to keep money and wealth.
Mhm.
So it's completely different. And so I think that's what we were missing last week is the culture. We talked
Well, I
about
wanna
religion, but the culture of it all. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to cut you off. When Rila was saying about the exchange, or you said exchange, correct? I don't know what was said because that was a conversation between men, and I don't really know exactly, and I don't think either one of those men are going to tell me exactly what was said, just because that's probably man talk. I have no idea. But what I do know is that I want to express something else to you all. It's not just about men talking. It's also a dowry system. We have dowry, which is money given to the bride's family, depending on certain things. So all these things come into play when we're talking about the exchange, as you always call it. There's a lot more that goes into it than just the men talking. It's a lot of negotiating, a lot of compromises, a lot of questions of how things will be handled in the future, and so on.